This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. You are built to resist life. The mechanism that creates this resistance is the ego. Although the ego seems like a thing, it's really just programming. Part of this programming is to resist life, to reject life. I don't like and I don't want are common expressions of the ego which reflect this resistance. It's good to be aware of these simple statements because whenever they appear, it's the false self or ego, your negative programming speaking them. People tend to think of the ego as necessary, and this is true of the aspect of the ego that gives you a sense of individuality. Many of the survival instincts which sometimes serve are also part of the ego. But beyond that, the ego could be described as negative and limiting programming you don't need, which you're meant to overcome. That aspect of the ego is the dragon that must be slain to achieve the freedom and happiness that's possible. It is the challenge to be overcome as a human being. This is a very dense planet. Of course, the planet itself is not dense, but the consciousness of humanity, which is governed by this very negative ego. The ego creates the density, the suffering, and the conflict that are part of your lives. Without this programming, your world would be experienced as indescribably beautiful, wondrous, and the great gift that it surely is. The density is within you, within humanity. But it can be overcome, and humanity's overall state of consciousness can be raised. It's overcome by becoming aware of this programming rather than agreeing with it. Your default is to agree that you don't like or don't want something, and this is reinforced by others who don't like and don't want certain things. Everyone is programmed with the same likes and dislikes, generally speaking. Awareness of this program brings freedom from it. Can it really be that simple? Not exactly. Awareness isn't quite enough. You can witness your thoughts, desires, fears, likes and dislikes, and still suffer over them if you aren't witnessing them from the vantage point of your true self, which doesn't have those desires, fears, likes, and dislikes. Most of the time you observe your thoughts from a split-off part of the ego that is very unhappy with those thoughts. Your ego doesn't like its own thoughts. That's where many of you find yourselves. You observe your thoughts, and you're upset that you have them. You don't like them. But remember what I just said. Whenever I don't like appears, that's your ego. I don't like my thoughts is just more ego. So notice this when this happens. Notice your thoughts and notice your reaction to your thoughts, your rejection of them. Then don't stop there at just noticing this, for there's another step or two. The next thing beyond noticing that you don't want those thoughts is to turn away from them instead of feeling bad about having them, which is the inevitable result of remaining in the mental realm. Choosing to turn away from your thoughts isn't the same as rejecting them, as it might seem. What chooses to turn away from thoughts is the thought-free self, your true self. It touches thoughts, notices them, and then, without judging them or pushing them away, simply moves on to something more real than thoughts. Your true self is this close. It's right here. You see, your true self is deeply in love with life, with reality. It relishes the juiciness of sounds, sights, smells, tastes, and the feel of everything it encounters. It's more interested in these and gets more satisfaction from these than from thoughts. Yes, there's some enjoyment in thinking. Your true self loves that too, but not to the exclusion of everything else. The ego or false self, on the other hand, rejects real life, the stuff that real experience is made of, and gets lost and stays lost in the imaginary mental realm, which as a steady diet is just not fulfilling. Your true self turns away from thoughts, especially ones that aren't functional or creative, to engage with real life, not to reject those types of thoughts. Your true self touches everything with love, but it's discriminating about what it gets lost in, although it lets you get lost in your thoughts if you choose to. What the true self loves most of all is experiencing whatever's being experienced about this beautiful world, as well as creating, learning, growing, exploring, loving, and helping and connecting with others in meaningful ways. But your true self is also here to fulfill a certain life purpose. Your true self is not just about losing itself in experiences and the physical sensations and enjoyment of life, but also about accomplishing what it came into this life for. Getting lost in the machinations and imaginations of the ego, its strategies, what it likes and doesn't like, what it wants and doesn't want, and its fantasies for the future and obsessions with the past, are just not that interesting to your true self. They're irrelevant to it and only of interest to your ego. And yet there is no judgment whatsoever on the part of the true self about this programming we call the ego. So when your true self encounters a thought that comes from this programming, it welcomes it and then kisses it goodbye. Maybe that's a way you could come to view your thoughts as well. You could say, "Hello, welcome, and I'll be on my way now. I have lots of love to spread around. I must be about my Father's business." Imagine if you related to your egoic thoughts, all of the thoughts involved with I, this way. That's what I'm suggesting. Your true self does relate to such thoughts this way. When you're aligned with it, you naturally feel no resistance to life or to the thoughts that come into your mind. What a relief it is to stop resisting life. And all it really takes is finding that attitude within you that is in tune with the true self, and then relating to your thoughts that way, instead of having the usual push-pull relationship with them, being both compelled by thought and resistant to it. Both stances come from the ego, and both keep you involved in the ego's world. Resistance to your thoughts doesn't free you from the ego, but ties you to it. Notice this resistance and find the place within you that doesn't resist thoughts or anything else. This place within you of love and non-resistance is something I can only point you toward. You have to choose to look for it yourself and keep looking until you find it. I can't choose to do this for you or find it for you. You have to search for it and then choose to stay with it. That is the work. That is your work as an evolving spiritual being. You are discovering the place of peace and love within you that doesn't resist life, but embraces it all. Look for it and stay there once you find it. I'll give you one more insight to make this easier. This place of non-resistance and love for life is discovered by being very still. Sit still, be quiet, listen to the sounds around you with as much attention and love as you can. If you do this long enough, you'll find yourself aligned with what naturally accepts and loves life. That's easy, don't you think? Then keep doing that as much as you can throughout your day. Just listen, notice, be, experience without evaluation whatever you're experiencing. This will take practice, but with practice you'll be able to stay engaged with and engrossed in real life, not with your ideas, beliefs, opinions, and likes and dislikes, but with reality, plain and simple. The mind doesn't like reality, and it doesn't like plain and simple. It has so much to say about every little thing. Let it chatter on. Meanwhile, just stay here in the simple experience of this moment, without the commentary, or with the commentary going on in the background. This is what it's like to be awake. When you're awake to life. Your eyes, ears, and other senses are awake to reality and drinking in the experience of life you're having right now in your present moment experience. You'll find that this moment is more than enough to satisfy you. The once-in-a-lifetime experience of each new moment is deeply loved and relished by your divine self, which is having a wonderful time. This is true happiness, true peace, and the contentment you all yearn for, but which eludes you in the egoic state of consciousness. Find what is saying yes to life now and in every moment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your attention and openness to this message. I am with you always.